Hi, I'm here today with Judith O'Callaghan, who is a co-author of a book, also a um, kind of a tech insider, and I'll let her kind of describe what she does. Judith and I connected through LinkedIn, and I'll tell you a little bit about how shocked I was because one day I got a note from someone that we were connected already, but I got a note asking for my feedback on something, and I thought, this person who's an accomplished scholar, has gone to Harvard Business School, has co-authored a book, is asking me for my feedback. I was very humbled by that. And so, of course, we were already connected because I had stumbled upon Judith's writing. And it's super intriguing to me. And I encourage you, if you have not yet discovered Judith's LinkedIn page, the link will be in the comments of this video. I encourage you to go out and read it. And Judith, thank you very much for agreeing to chat with me today. I know it's very early where you are, and I'm super grateful. I will tell you, it is a beautiful 81-degree day here in Detroit, Michigan, which doesn't happen very often. So thank you again for joining me. And I was wondering, would you kick us off by kind of giving some background on your history of how did you get where you are today, and then we'll talk a lot about your ancient wisdom.
Thank you very much, John, for having me. So it's a pleasure. So I value your writing and I value what you do and the impact that you're making on the world. So when I received an invitation from you, I was very excited, and it is great to be on the be on this platform with you. So about me, I run SAP transformations for a living. So I started working on SAP transformation in my early 20s, and then it progressed into bigger transformations. So I worked in India, where I started my career in South India, and then I lived in the US for a while. Now I currently live in Australia with my family. So personally, I have a daughter, and I live with my husband in the northern part of Australia, and we love the sunshine state. So, in terms of my work on ancient wisdom, which has started in the last 6 months, I had a situation happening to me. So about 8 months back, I thought about what makes me different, and what is that when I work on transformations. What is a part of me that I bring to the table? And then the answer relied in yes, wisdom has been handed over to me from many people, my parents or grandparents or even great grandparents in different forms. And that's part of my values. And I started writing them down. And at one point, someone mentioned if I have shared it with someone. So I go, no. And I started sharing it in LinkedIn. And about 5 months later, we had about 1 million people viewing the content. And then I realized maybe this is something powerful. I need to put more interest in it, or interest or effort in it, and start sharing it more. So it's just basic concepts of ancient wisdom, which I start sharing with people. And what has happened, the miraculous thing that has happened after I started sharing was people from all over the world reached out to me to share their history or the wisdom that have been handed over to them. This is very powerful because it's for me, it was very beautiful because it was complete strangers who trust me, or who trust the power of ancient wisdom, and they're willing to share the lessons or the knowledge that they have learned. So that's where it all started. So what I do now is I'm compiling a book which is called Transformations Powered by Ancient Wisdom. So this is about how we can apply ancient wisdom in the modern world and make a difference to what we do.
So that's really cool, and I'm going to have some questions about the book process that you're going through.
Yeah.
Publishing a book has become a new
Mhm.
fascination for me.
Yeah.
Now, you've already co-authored a book, correct?
Yes. Yes, I have. So this was early last year. A global publishing house reached out to me to write a part of my story. So this was about how I ended up in the US and relocated to Australia, moved to Australia along the way. So it was kind of fascinating when two people reached out and say, "Hey, we like your story and we think it's powerful if you have time to share it." And I've never done authoring before, so it was a new field, and they took me through the process. That the publisher and the editor, they were very friendly, and there was another friend who was very, very supportive in the process. So, and it's a compilation along with other 20 authors. So this is about people whose lives have changed in a moment. So in my case, my life changed in a moment when I was in South India, and I had to literally, I had 24 hours to rebuild my life in a different continent where I didn't know anyone. So it was a strange experience, but very powerful. Once someone goes through it, they are a changed person. So when I realized that I'm not alone, there are 25 other people who are in the process and they're also willing to share the story. That was powerful. And I co-authored that book, and I'll send you the link, John, so viewers can see it. And this one is the one that I'm currently working on is purely on transformation. So this is how we can bring our true selves, and the wisdom in us and the wisdom around us will help us transform things. Well, when we look at it in the past, our ancestors of any part of the world, they have led their lives and they have transformed, that they've improved, and they've continually made the world a better place. And we have the same opportunity with all this technology and all the advancements available to us, and the ability to collaborate with people completely on different sides of the world. And we've got a beautiful gift, and we live in a beautiful time in the history where things like this are possible. Like, just like you and I met 2,000 miles away, millions of miles away. So we can definitely have that powerful thing much expanded, and we can work on making things better, easier, and more useful to everyone.
Yeah. So you talked about the moving from India to the United States to Australia. That is, to me, that's pretty exciting because the part of the United States that you lived in is, technically, as far as civilization is concerned, a couple hundred years old. But in the history in India it's got to be overwhelming from an emotional perspective, because when I visit places like Virginia, Washington D.C., or Philadelphia, where there's a couple hundred years of history there for us, I'm really overwhelmed by the energy there. And I'm curious, how old did I don't remember if you told me this. How old were you when you left India?
Early 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm now in my early 40s. Yeah.
Well, you do not look like you're in your early 40s. So,
thank you.
So the history, and I can only imagine that you probably have that same vibe, that you can absorb that energy of the history there in India.
Yes.
I'm curious. Do you go back to visit often?
Oh, yes. I used to go every 6 months. So since I've had my child, other things took priority. So I'm definitely in the planning a visit now. So talking about history, so the place where I grew up has a lot of history. It's one of the ancient ports, so capital of Pandya Kingdom, which is it's Tirunelveli, so it has lots and lots of history. So it's one of the ancient kingdoms of the Tamil world. So people in the place absorb history, and we radiate history. So that reflects in trading practices and how we treat each other and how we respect boundaries, all those things that naturally happen. And where it is in the map, if we look at it, it's a place where it's a fusion of all the cultures. So you get Middle East traders, and you have Eastern, for example, Singapore, Malaysian traders. So it's like that southern tip of India. So we get all the fusion. So what I realized was when I was growing up, I took this for granted. So I thought every place has this history, and every place has this knowledge of and stuff. So Jacksonville, when I moved in, it's a great place. I really loved it. I'd still call it my second home. And I have friends who become families, and I visit often, so it's just great. And when I went to St. Augustine for the first time, I felt different in the fort and in the places, in certain places. And that's I was in my early 20s, and I was all new to this feeling, sensing type of thing, which now I pay a special attention to. And now at St. Augustine, at some point I felt like, okay, people have been here before, and this is a place of respect. It was just a fort, and I was walking around, so it doesn't look any different when I look back at the pictures. This is a fort, that's a fort. I like reading history, so there you go. But that felt different. And then I went to the northern parts, as the places that you mentioned, John, Virginia, Philadelphia, and all those places. Some places where you go, you can feel and see the history. So it's nobody has to explain it to you. So you get out of the car park, walk to certain places, and you'll feel it. You'll feel it in your heart, your soul, and the body feels different in my case. So, and I spoke about this to my husband, and when we got married, we went back to Jacksonville to meet our extended family, and he said the same thing. So I started paying more attention to it, and this time, every time we go to India, we try to visit those ancient places, the sacred places, and for example, the place where St. Thomas landed. For me, I feel very different. It's just a port. It's still trading happens, and there is more to it than being just a port. So, and also a few places for me, yes, I have sensed that we feel something more. So
Yeah, it's to me, I everything you're saying, I'm just pulled in because I can, and I'll share with you what the reason I know this is real is I have been in historic places where I'm like, yeah, I'm just not feeling it. And then later to find out that, oh, it's all been restored and remodeled. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's why I don't feel it. But I can tell, like, I can feel the energy when I'm in some place that is genuinely and authentically historic. And yeah, it's so I know exactly what you're talking about when you describe that energy and that feeling. And maybe this is the first time I've ever talked about it, but you're the first person that I've ever been able to connect with
yeah.
like that, because I know I get weird and crazy looks when I'm in these places, and I'm just like I'm absorbing all the energy.
Yeah.
And specifically for my family, I know they're looking at me like, all right, let's go, let's wrap this up. You've already read all this stuff 5 times. Let's go. But that's really cool. Um, yeah, and I apologize for being a little all over the place, ADHD, but the
Absolutely okay. Yeah.
the book publishing is
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting to me. I know you and I have talked about. I've talked to a couple of publishers. I'm just curious. You had mentioned that they had reached out to you to say, "Hey, we want you to be a part of this project." So, did you just turn your writing in, or did you have some kind of say in the
Ah,
editing and the processing of that?
this is quite interesting, right? So I've worked, I should say, I worked with a publisher, and I'm now working with a couple. So everyone has their own flavor. So there is no right or wrong, and the methods, everyone has a framework. So this is just like project management methodology. So, some things work, some things you need to tweak, and some things you have to adjust. So the first one was, because it was a co-authoring thing, the publisher did a great job of giving a format that you need to stick to, and also word limits and things that you need to work with. So that's absolutely okay. And as an author, you definitely have a part in editing and publishing and any of the cover design or anything like that. So that's great. But when we're authoring by ourselves or with one co-author, one thing I've learned is, yes, when you author by yourself, you have to be in sync with the publisher totally. So it's as someone explained, it's like a marriage.
Mhm.
So you don't have to agree with the person, but you have to be in total sync with the person to make the process work. So the people I work with, I genuinely believe they respect me and I respect them, and we are in total sync. with the content or in terms of the way it's portrayed and stuff. So Paul, one of the main publisher that I'm working with, he has guided so many first-time authors. So he's a wealth of knowledge in the sense he talks about blind writing, nirvana writing, all these writing techniques, which are completely new to me. So what he did was introduced me to those writing techniques and helped me understand when I write best. Is it at 4 a.m. in the morning or at midday during lunch or or at night or something. So then you pick out the zone. He calls it the writing zone, which is different for every person. And you work out when you write best and then dedicate some time where you can actually put through the content. The first time we do, Paul calls it blind writing. So which is you just don't think about it. As long as you have a topic and you're obsessed with that topic, write it and don't bring your logical brain into it, and then do a first draft or a first editing. That's when you remove yourself from the picture and remove the emotions from the picture and read it as a reader and edit it. And then it goes through 2 or 3 drafts in terms of you look at it, publisher looks at it, someone else looks at it, and then the final one would be good for everyone. And in the process, you also do things like ideal reader avatar and burning bridges. So these are small exercises, but very, very powerful. Ideal reader avatar is about, it's about writing about who the ideal readers are and bringing that character to life. So you literally give a name and a persona to the character and write about that person or that ideal reader, where they were born, where they were raised, and what their interests are, and what they like about what they like and dislike, and when can they actually read, because all this form part of the editing process. Because, for example, if they're writing a business books, most of them are likely to pick it up at the airport or let's say at the train station or something, and they're very limited by the time they have to read. So what we need to communicate to them needs to be very precise, concise, because their attention span is going to be less than 30 minutes or something. So we need to be able to communicate to them in short chapters and short paragraphs, or so they can come back and revisit it any time. But when we look at other things that is happening to that person, they need to choose our book with all the competing priorities that is going on in their world. So the whole exercise certainly helps. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that. That paints a much better picture for me. There's another writer that I have talked to a few times, and he does a lot of that, really just fleshing out who the character is. And it's intriguing to me to watch him do it, because they're characters he's created. The moral of the story is generally based off of a true event, but he comes up with ways of telling. It's something I'm interested in. It's a different type of story that I tell. I like to tell personal stories about real things that happened and how I overcame them, or sometimes how I didn't overcome them. And so, and which is why your stories have been captivating, because, and I think you and I have talked about this before, where I don't think, human nature has changed all that much. I think that unfortunately there's just more humans, so things happen more often. And then the impact of social media and the mass media, where we hear about all these crazy things that are happening, and sometimes good things, but it's usually what sells is the drama. So and that's what in the articles that you've shared with me and what I've read on LinkedIn, that is what. And I guess whenever you're exposed to something that just reinforces what you believe, obviously that's you're soaking that up, and you're like, yeah, see, I told you. Look, even I read it over here too. Sorry, I go down rabbit trails sometimes.
That's exactly what happens, right? The mind. Someone explained to me, someone very senior, the mind always picks up what you know. So it's kind of common. So you tend to connect with people who have similar experiences, And that is why we tend to form a comfort zone with few people, or we are able to establish true and meaningful connections. And also the mind is very powerful in terms of when it sees an experience that you've experienced before, it goes, it's just reinforcing it, or it builds that muscle, and then builds on it. So I read a bit on the positive intelligence. It's a concept by Shizad Shamin, a new author that I'm currently following and reading, and all about how the brain actually, uh, you know, believes in experiences and develops on it. This is fascinating because it's based on neuropsychology, positive psychology, and a lot of neuroscience research and all. But all he's communicating in the books is the ancient principles, where we try to genuinely listen to us and listen to our senses, and being present enables us to achieve far more than just going completely through a data channel, as he calls it. It's just based on facts or whatever. So bringing that sensing, feeling, and belonging element enables us as to be real humans, which we are designed for, and it helps us to do a lot more. And for me, I've practiced it in the last 1 year. One of my colleagues, Bernie, introduced me to this concept, and I saw a change in his life, his thinking, and the execs that he's working with, and how their lives have changed. And I started reading more, and for me, it is very, very useful. Be it prioritizing or juggling schedules, or even figuring out how we actually guide the meeting, and the intelligence actually helps. So we tend to go with what we know, and that's why people tend to rely on data. And sometimes data is too old for decision making. So, for you and me, John, when a report is given to us, it is a history of it is actually history. You can't do anything about it. You can't go back and change it. You just read it, take it as a history, and move on. What matters is the now and what is going to happen later. That's our opportunity to change the course or change the history, whatever we do. History is very useful, it is relevant, but now matters more than the report. So in my case, it's like, do I actually go over the report and scrutinize every detail, or do I look at the data, digest it, and move on to the next stage, work out with everyone with a positive mind on what can we do better, easier, what we can do better. So those are simple things, lessons that I've learned from the application of ancient wisdom and positive wisdom.
I'm loving, like you can probably tell by my responses, I'm hanging on every word, because this is, to me, it's of huge interest. So I do have a question for you. That is, I generally ask two different questions, and what I will say is you have right of refusal. You do not have to answer, but I ask the same two questions to everyone that I interview. And that first question is, if today you could go back to 10-year-old you, and you could only say one sentence, spend more time with blank, who would that be?
So in my case, I would say spend more time with my grandparents. So they've been a fundamental part of my life, and I've learned a lot from my grandparents, especially from my grandfather. And I lost him when I was in college, about 20, in my early 20s. Just before I left, I had to leave home. So I still remember him every day. I've got a picture of him in every form, in every device, in every form, because that's how much I'm drawn to him. So he was born during, I think, First World War, and he was raised during Second World War, and he had been through a lot of adversities in his life. Like, for example, the world that he knew changed many, many times, and then he inherited the family business, and he had to turn it around, not just for him, but for the people who have trusted him, have worked with him, and he truly made a difference. So one of the things that he did, which I now understand why he did, it's about he'll share 33% of every profits, not the revenue, profits to the people who work with him. No questions asked. So every year I saw him do it for years and years. And I go, you can do completely different things. You can do many things like buy more businesses, divert it into something else. And he goes, no, people we need to work with need to be happy, and they are extended family, and he treated everyone like that. So I remember him giving part of some of his inheritance to someone, and I looked at him like, are you sure? And he goes, I'm definitely, this is something that he's totally sure. So, and I go, wow, what a human being. And I now genuinely feel like I've had, if I had more time, I would be spending more time with that person. And the way he spoke about every relationship in his life, it's total awesome, in the sense he could have remembered all the destruction that happened. He could have remembered all the negative things that he went through, but he always spoke about the positive things and the relationships that were born out of it. So he was for example, he was hiding in a bomb shelter with someone, and they ended up sharing their life stories, because that's what happens when people know that there is danger. And this formed a beautiful bond, and this individual and my grandfather remained friends for the next 50, 55 years, till they both left the world. So whenever he talks about the bomb shelter, he doesn't talk about the pain. He talks about the beautiful relationships that were formed. So what a beautiful way of looking at life. And he went through a lot of challenges, like our family went through a lot of challenges with the plantation and many other things, but he always saw the positive. So I would love to know what made him do that, because it's the why behind the what. So
Yes.
that's what I'm intrigued by. So if I can go back to my 10-year-old self, I would actually go back and ask more questions on what makes you do it, and also why do you do it. And he wrote a lot of chemistry books, and when you look at it, why did he take interest in chemistry? Like, when you have a business to run and everything, but you've also invested half your life in chemistry, setting up this lab in nowhere, and writing chemistry books. This why. So that's what I'm intrigued. Yeah.
What you say there is, Simon
Mm.
Sinek writes about the why,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
people don't get it. They don't understand the why isn't, well, I do that because I have to pay my mortgage, or I do that because I
Mm.
want a car, or I do that because I want food. The why, that when you speak of it, it's a deeper core value why. And I think that's a powerful question that you ask. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of touching a little bit, because to understand your grandfather's why, that
Yeah.
could be life changing, and that's a pretty deep answer. Um, Thank you for that. I
That's
appreciate
very
you
well.
being that vulnerable with me. Um,
Oh, thank you. And thank you for trusting me with those questions. So it is deep, and
yeah,
it's for all of us. If we can connect on the why, the what will be better and easier. And that's what we bring to transformations, right? So in my line of work, when I manage transformations, we try, with my colleagues and we try and get into the why. So why we do it, or why we choose not to do it. That's okay. The what comes after the why. So when we can truly be ourselves and connect to the basics and understand the why, it helps us be better people, serve our stakeholders better, and understand them in a much better light. And those who want understand the why, in my opinion, will go the extra mile. So they're not going to talk about overtime. They're not talking about, oh, I need to put in extra work or whatever it is. So they will do it. So the what becomes so easy when people understand the why. For example, last week, I think one of my colleagues, we went through a few reports, and uh, it was a light bulb moment when he and I and the other girl and the other lady in the team looked at each other and said, well, the client doesn't get it. It was just a light bulb moment. And you go, okay, all these things that we are producing, about 100 pages of information, this is not of meaning to them. And it was, people have been doing it for about a year or so. And then we three looked at each other and said, how about we produce something simple but meaningful and test it out with that client? And we did it, and the client goes, yes, this is good, because I can understand, I can relate to it, I can have a meaningful conversation with you. Was the client paying our bills previously? Yes. Was the client saying he was happy, he or she was happy? Yes, they were all happy, and this report was going everywhere. But the why wasn't met because none of us took the time to understand the why behind it. So in this case, it was a light bulb moment when all of us go, yes, it is beautiful. And for that client, it's his or her stakeholders that is going to be of benefit. And this information is powerful. It is going to make decisions. It is going to change lives. So yeah, there you go. Taking a moment to understand the why. I'm learning this every day. So understand the why behind the what.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah, I agree with you. And when I first heard him say it, I'm naturally skeptical. And my wife laughs at me because I won't say I won't give the details of it, but I'll just give you the summary. I stumbled upon somebody at one point because we were both recommended for a client, and not like both of us recommended because we would work together. We both do the same thing, and we were both recommended as choices for this client. And so I'm curious. I'm like, why would that person who knows both of us recommend both of us, knowing that the client is going to have to choose one of us? And so I started digging in, and the first few things I exposed myself to, skeptically, I said, this guy's an idiot. And my wife was with me when this happened, and I said it out loud. And she's like, well, why do you think that? And I'm like, oh, because he's going for these cliche one-liners, and that's just superficial. People are going to see through that. Well, then I like dug in, and I started watching all the guy's content. And as the deeper I dug, what it did, Judith, is it proved. I will remember who said it later when it's not important, but a quote that says, somebody famous said, I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said, I can't dislike a person that I know. I can only dislike someone I don't know. And the whole meaning and purpose behind that, you obviously, you're aware, is in every situation I've ever had, there's been really few situations where I've gotten to know someone and then I said, I don't like them. Usually the more you get to know them, you can find something to like. And so I'm watching this guy's content, and I'm learning more about him. And I get to the point where I'm frustrated, and my wife's like, what does it matter? And I'm like, this guy is me. And she's like, what do you mean he's you? And I'm like, well, he's an old white guy going bald, talks about leadership, talks about motivation, drives a damn Jeep Wrangler. And like, I'm because that's what I drive. And so I'm frustrated because I'm like, here's why I'm really frustrated. I'm frustrated because I initially said, this guy's an idiot. And then I'm like, I'm an idiot because this guy's me. Like and so, but in how I tie this in is I keep going back to that why. So Simon Sinek says this. So, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I'm like, whatever, man. And then of course I start diving in, and I'm like, oh, okay. Oh yeah. And then I'm pulled in because I'm like, I totally agree with that. He's right. So it's, to me, when you said that like it really grabbed a hold of me, because I'm like, yeah, you're right. The real why. And it speaks to what I do, because I don't write every day for you or for anybody else. I write to cleanse my soul. I write for me, it's therapy, it's a way for me just to deal with whatever I'm thinking about. It doesn't have to be what I'm going through. It could just be I saw something happen, I didn't like it. It had an emotional impact on me. Maybe I loved it. And then I've got to write about it so that I can really work through how I feel about it. But then I put it out there because I started putting it out there just because I'm like, hey, I'm going to share this just to keep my name relevant in the industry. And people started reading it. People started paying attention. And I did the exact same thing you did. I was 100% only sharing my writing to stay relevant in my industry while I sat out a non-compete. And then one day I look at the data and I'm like, over 1 million people have read my writing. And I said, that can't be real. And like LinkedIn is just blowing smoke because they want me to put more content out there. And here's the heartbreaking thing about LinkedIn's data is it is real. And it is real because it can help you. It can really boost your ego, but it can deflate you that fast. And when you've
Very
had something that hits really high, and you're like, yeah, this is great. And then you post something and like nobody reads it. I'm like, there was a morning where I posted something that was hilarious. I'm like, this is great. People are gonna love this. And like 2 hours later, I'm not kidding, Judith, 100 people had looked at it. I'm like, come on now, I've got over 50,000 followers. You're telling me 100 people? And I'm like, well, apparently it wasn't as funny as I thought it was. So sorry, I again another rabbit trail.
It's great. Like some of the things, right? So when like you and many authors, the content that we all tend to write content for different reasons, and it's not posted the same day as we write it. So it's like some of them could be years old. So or an experience could be years old, or something that we observe. So one of the things that happened to me recently was I had this was 20 years back. So I started looking at all the projects that were always on time, budget, cost, and quality. The golden triangle that every PM loves. So and then one day, it was I think during a flight, I looked at it and I said, if everything is great, then why are actually projects failing? Or why is it not achieving the outcome? So, and that led me to a lot of series of philosophical thinking and investigations and talking to people and everything. And that's when I came to the big question on the why. So we tend to do this. We focus way too much on the what in everything that we do, and we forget the why. And the what is great. Like if we look at it, for many of us, like in terms of I can talk about my world, where projects, when people talk about it, it's time, cost, and money, great, and it's all meeting its deliverable, it's meeting its timelines, and the quality of the deliverables is great. And you look at the stakeholder engagements, on paper it looks great, everything is great. So why are we actually not achieving the outcome? What are we doing? And in some cases where we hear stories of millions spent and still we haven't done anything. And when we go back and look at the reports, it's all great. So what is that we are missing as humans? And then we talk about this fundamental thing of bringing our whole self to work or to whatever we do. And we see things that we do not necessarily see, hear things that we don't necessarily hear. It's the sensing and the feeling and, looking at the parts of brain which normally doesn't get activated when we are just focused on something. So that's when I found, relying on my true self or my ancient wisdom or anything beyond, and connecting genuinely with stakeholders. And it's just not a coffee. It's about the valuable time that I've spent understanding that person, understanding their stakeholders, understanding what they're going through. And it's not a lunch, and it's where I truly understand what drives that person, and also beyond what that person is. So so these are little things that I learned and I started applying. And which brings to egos deflated or inflated. It happens thousands of times every day. Sometimes you feel so good in the same hour, and then say at the end of the same hour you feel deflated, or it happens even for me in milliseconds. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that we can relate on so many subjects.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
my next question really it really puts you in a vulnerable spot. And
Okay.
I'll just ask the question,
Yeah,
and based on your comfort level, I may
yeah,
go first and tell you what
fine.
mine
Yeah,
is. And
yeah.
then so my second question is based on vices. And so, essentially,
What's vices? Sorry.
so a vice would be like a bad habit. Like we do
Oh,
something
okay. Yeah,
that we shouldn't do.
yeah,
And so, I asked the question of, if you could go
yeah,
back today and tell 10-year-old
yeah,
self something. Um,
yeah,
so if 70-year-old you walked in the
yeah.
door right now and said, Judith, stop doing this, what do you
Hmm.
what would you predict that is?
Okay. That's very easy to talk about because this is a place where I'm totally vulnerable. So that's good. So one thing I've learned is if I can go back to my 10-year-old self and tell that person not to do something, it's about blame yourself or make yourself the victim. So the thing is, things happen, and sometimes we become the victim. Or in a world where we grew up, or rather, I grew up in the 80s, where everyone wanted perfection in everything, wanted you to be the best in school, the best in doing something, best in painting, swimming, whatever it is. So it's like when you fall short of that expectation, you tend to blame yourself. Maybe I didn't put in enough hard work, and maybe I didn't do this, maybe I didn't do that. It's like everything happens for a reason. Give it a try. So for it, that for me translated to when things didn't go to plan, when I started working or when I was in college or something, I used to blame myself. Like when I was like it was so funny when I looked at it. When I was 20, I had a good score in college, but I couldn't be happy because the subject that I really loved, I was the second. There was someone else who scored better than me. So how silly was I? Instead of celebrating that I've learned something and I've got the knowledge to do something more, here was I upset that somebody scored better than me. I should have scored better. I'm like, trivial.
Yeah,
It's nothing. So look at the positive side, and I should have said, yes, I have learned a lot, and here I have a whole world in front of me where I'm going to use this knowledge to make a difference. So that translates to a lot of aspects of our life. Things happen to us for a reason, and everything is a gift and an opportunity. Take it, use it, even if things are not friendly, not what you want, or sometimes people go through horrible things. It's just the way it is. But everything brings in beautiful gifts to our lives and beautiful opportunities and opens doors that we never thought would open. For example, you and I are talking, John, and who thought last year? I never thought I would have the opportunity to speak to you or speak to someone like you. And and here we are today connecting and talking about deep aspects of our life that we truly believe and truly we know we can connect on. So this is a beautiful opportunity. So stop blaming us or anyone else or playing the victim. So just go for the opportunity, look for the opportunity. That's what I would tell my 10-year-old self. Yeah.
so you said a couple things there
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
resonate with me. And
Yeah.
you're aware that for the month of
Yeah.
March, I highlighted a strong female leader that I admire.
Yeah.
And I tried to not write a lot
Yeah.
because I didn't want it about me. I wanted
Mm.
people to spend their time looking at someone else. And that whole thing was really inspired by
Mm.
another project that my daughter had written, some books. Actually, I have it behind me. I'm not sure if
Okay.
I can move it. You can see it. It's
Oh yes, we
that
can see it
that
now.
that
Yeah.
blue book back there.
Okay.
She wrote a book for every member of the family, and it
Wow.
was prompted by a series of questions that she had to answer but then she wrote essentially essays about each family member. And she
That's
some things,
powerful.
yeah, at the time she was 11. And um, so it hit me hard because some of the things that she wrote, um, you know, there was a sentence that said, "I'm sorry for the
Mhm.
silly things I do," and that hit me hard because I feel like women apologize for too much, and
Yeah. Mhm.
specifically women apologize for too much. And I know that there's cultural differences from where we sit
Mm.
currently, but you've lived here in America, so I think you kind of understand that
Yes.
while as progressive as America is, it's still not. And my own industry is still
Mm.
dominated by old white guys, and it's getting better every year. But
Mm.
unless more people like me look in the mirror and say,
Mm.
I don't want more people who look like me coming up the ranks, you're never going to get the full, true
Mm.
talent and growth that's possible to you. And so, I think a lot of what you said
Mm.
holds so much value to the whole world of
Mm.
stop playing that victim, stop believing that the universe is crapping on you, and really look at the true blessings that are out there. Another guy that I did a podcast with,
Mm.
one of the things he says a lot is, it didn't happen to me, it happened for me. And I've stolen that from
Well,
him.
that's
Not,
powerful, right?
yeah. Um,
Happened for you. Yeah.
yeah, because every single, and I've written about this before, but
Mm.
we don't stop to think about all those little things that happen throughout the course of your day that could be that door that opens and a
Mm.
whole different path is there for you. And so, I have tried hard to really communicate to the women in my life, whether they're my family or whether they are women I work with, to say, be you. There's a million things professional men do every day, and they don't think twice about it. Be you and be unapologetically you. Just get out there and be the best version of you that you can be, and don't worry about what everybody else is thinking. Just worry about being a good person and adding value. And so I love what you said because I've said this on other interviews before, but it's something I strongly believe in. Can you imagine what we as a human race could accomplish if every single person woke up tomorrow morning with the belief in themselves that they're going to go out and they're going to be their very best? They're going to contribute at the highest level. They're not going to be afraid to speak up. They're not going to be afraid to say, hey, what would happen if we push this button instead? Imagine what we could accomplish if all of that fear was gone and we had the courage. Now, granted, as you and I have talked before,
Mm.
there's probably going to be a lot of people that go out there and act like a complete fool and they treat people badly. Um, it's the normal course of
Mm.
human nature that some people just don't care about others. But I think there's a lot more good in the world. I think there's a lot more people out there who really truly want the world to be a better place. So that's my hope and my dream that someday I live to see it when the majority of the human race can actually achieve their greatness.
Yeah, absolutely true. And you hit a very good point, John. So, in terms of when I look at it, I started my career in logistics. Me and my another colleague, who's my best friend now, we're the two people among 10,000 men. Yep. But somebody took a chance in us, so and gave us that opportunity. And when I moved to running SAP transformations, I was the only girl among the whole lot of men. So somebody took that chance in me, and also when I look at it now, when why do we need diversity? This brings in diversity of thought, which is the
Mhm.
most powerful thing. We all bring in our experiences. We all bring in our whole self, whether we like it or not. That's who we are, and we together are powerful. So if we get the same version of us in any shape and form, we lose 80% or 90% of what's available to us. So in terms of knowledge, in terms of skills, in terms of mindset, in terms of everything. So having that thought diversity, which appears in different forms, people look different, they behave different, they dress different, and it's differences. So let's choose to embrace our differences. That's where our true strength comes from. I like the saying which my daughter's childcare had it, and I took a picture of it. Our strength lies in the differences, not in our similarities. So the more diverse we are, that's our true strength.
Yes.
And we don't have to work on it at all. So if you want a different perspective, get a different person in the team. That's what people used to say, whether they knew it or didn't know it. But the reason behind why is different perspectives. So these days, when I look at it, one of the this was used in an interesting context. Last year, I led a team which was completely very, very different. And one of the other colleagues commented, "Oh, here comes the United Nations," and I was like, "Wow, that is great!" So we've got perspectives of almost every person in the world, or whatever. So how powerful we are! So we flipped that narrative and made it very positive and worked for us. And what I learned from that team, leading that team, is the humility that we all humans have, knowing us and knowing that we know something and we also don't know a lot of things, and we choose to be vulnerable with each other, and let us all cover our blind spots. Everyone has blind spots. Any human does. So it's about being vulnerable and being open and trusting each other to cover that blind spots. And as you said, if we as human race choose to do that, how powerful we are going to be. And imagine the outcomes that we are going to bring to the world, which is going to be beyond any expectations. So let's choose to go down that path rather than a path of compete and you know, make things difficult for each other. So let's choose to embrace each other, choose to embrace our differences, even when we don't know what those are.
Yeah,
that's my take on it.
I'm with you on that. And you know, there's we've talked about so much previously, and I was hoping to be able to work that in this conversation. And I know that based on time, we're not going to be able to get to all of it. But I do hope that that we can talk again. And I know that you got up very early in the morning on a Sunday to talk to me, and I want you to know I'm very willing to get up very early in the morning to talk to you, or stay up late, whatever works. I have truly enjoyed this exchange. As I said earlier, I'm going to put all the links in the comments of this, and then I'll also share them wherever this video is shared on social media, for your books, for your writing. Judith, is there any other way that anybody watching this can support your projects?
Oh, absolutely. So please follow me, and please follow John on LinkedIn. And you know, when the new book comes in, we'll definitely put the link there. And I'm sure John, you and I will be connecting very often. So we can definitely do that. And if there is ancient wisdom that is available or being handed over to you, and you want to pass that along, please feel free to reach out. So, you know, I am passionate, and that's the area that I genuinely believe I'm being drawn to, and that's my purpose. So if you have pieces of ancient wisdom that has been given to you, treat it as a nugget of gold. And if you're willing to share it, please share that with me, and we can share it for the rest of the world. So together we'll make the world a better place.
I agree, and thank you for that. So the one last question that I have, and it's related to the books. One of the things I talk about and I write about is different people's learning styles. And the reason that the YouTube page came into existence was I recognized that there are a lot of people out there like me whose learning style maybe isn't reading, maybe their learning style is audio or visual. Will there be an audio version of your book, or video lectures?
Yeah, absolutely. There will be audio lectures on that audio side of the book. So I'm neurodiverse, and I totally understand everyone's learning and input style is very different. So mine could be very different. So audiobooks, definitely a yes. So you can play that in your car or during your commute, and you're riding a bike, or whenever people are interested. And definitely, if you need more video content, we'll release that for you, especially so for those very visual learners. Yes, we will work on the content and share that in addition to the physical book that some of us like to read during the airplane travels.
Yeah. So I did tell my wife about, we talked about the reading, and I will say I'm proud of myself, because when I read slow, but my lips do not move when I read. So I think that doesn't put me at the bottom of the ladder. Maybe I'm like somewhere in the middle. But I told her that there's an actual word for this. I don't remember what it was. Could you tell me again?
Yeah, it's hyperlexia. Some of us can read faster than other people. So yeah, I learned it when I was turning pages, and when a loved one asked me, "Are you just turning pages, or are you reading?" And I said, "I'm reading." Yeah. So that's when I researched more, and I realized there is a word for it, and there are a lot of people in the world who actually have that. So they can, most people can finish a book in an hour or less than an hour. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
gift, just like everything. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Thank you. So I appreciate you watching this video. You can follow my YouTube channel, subscribe to it. If you do, click the bell. You'll get notified when videos post. And of course, as Judith asked, please follow us on LinkedIn. That's where the majority of the writing goes live. I am venturing out into some monetized formats. Substack is one of them. Gumroad is another. And there'll be more information on that coming out probably in the next few weeks as I load up the content on those platforms. So thank you very much. Very grateful if you have made it this far. Very grateful for that. Thank you.